Hello, my name is Asana6000.
And I'm Infrared Panda. We're Neg Affinity. In this series, we're going to help you guys become great plugin developers.
Today we'll be going over how to set up your workspace, starting from setting up Java, then Eclipse, and then setting up Gradle.
Alright, we're starting from the bare basics in this series, but in order for you to follow along, you should have a pretty good understanding of Java programming. If you ever get stuck or we're going too fast, feel free to pause the video and ask questions in the comments.
Alright, so let's get started. The first thing you're going to need to do is go to this page. All the links will be in the description for this tutorial and the rest of the series. This should be the first link. This is the Java Development Kit, known as the JDK. You have to get JDK 8 or above because Sponge only supports Java 8. Now what you need to do is accept the license agreement and then download the one correct for your operating system. You'll notice it's a 32-bit version and then a 64-bit version. I'm going to be downloading the 64-bit version.
Alright, if you don't know which version of Windows you own, you can actually go and head over and you can press the Windows key and then type in system information. It'll bring up a window which will advise you about just different things about your computer, and one of them will be what kind of operating system you're running. So of course, if it says 64-bit architecture, then you're going to want to download the 64-bit version. There you go.
Okay, so I'm just going to cancel this because obviously I already have Java set up. Once that's on, you will want to go over to command prompt and make sure that your Java path is set up correctly. This is usually done by the Java installer. If it's not done properly, I will leave a link on how to do it with a short tutorial, but basically if this command doesn't work and return an output and it says the Java command is unrecognized, then you need to configure your path. This is a pretty easy process. Windows 10 really made this much easier. So I will leave a tutorial for Mac and Windows in the description. So now that you have your JDK set up, you're going to want to download Eclipse. So what you're going to want to do is go over here, download, and obviously it'll download an exe file that is your Eclipse installation. So I'm just going to cancel that as well. We're going to run through setting up Eclipse now. So once you first launch Eclipse, you'll be greeted with something like this. You need to pick the folder for where you're going to keep all your projects. Okay, now that this is opened, the first thing I do when I set up a new Eclipse installation or workspace, I always turn on dark theme. This is optional. So what you do to set up dark theme is you go over here, click appearance, you select dark, you press apply. Once it's done loading, you press OK. You also, if this comes up, I just usually disable recorder. I don't use it for anything. So now we are going to be setting up Gradle. You don't need to install anything for Gradle. I'm just showing this page because you can learn more about the documentation and how Gradle works and what it's used for. It's used in Android programming, Unity programming, and various other projects. It's a very useful tool that Sponge has used to set up their own workspaces for their project as well as for plugins based off of their project. And throughout this tutorial, we will be using Gradle. So in the docs, if you want to follow along, you can go to creating a plugin and setting up Gradle. And this will show you how to build up your Gradle project. But first, you're going to want to go over here, File, New, you want to hit Other, then scroll down to the Gradle tab and create the Gradle project. From here, you select a project name. This can be whatever you want. It's recommended not to have spaces, but it's okay if it does. Mine is just going to be called Tutorial Project. So you can see that it said build successful in console, and that's because it quickly built the bare bones of your project. If we open this up, which I'm going to show you in a second, you can see that it's generated all of the stuff. It generates your class path, project, all of this stuff. The things you need to pay attention to are the build.gradle, settings.gradle, and source file. The source folder contains all of your source code. The build.gradle contains the information needed to build your project by Gradle. So if we open this up, loading, you'll see that this is a Eclipse generated Gradle file, and we're going to be setting it up through Eclipse for sponge development. So we open it up, and the first thing I'm going to do is clean it out and remove all the comments. So you can read it. Alright, and we're just going to clear out the dependencies section. And if you go over to the sponge, it'll have the same base structure. You're just going to want to replace that because it just gives the sponge Maven repository, which is where you're going to be downloading the sponge API. And we're going to change this to 5.0.0-snapshot. I cannot type today. So 5.0 is the latest API revision for Minecraft 1.10. This tutorial series will be 1.10. As Minecraft progresses into 1.11 and beyond, we will be doing updates of this series, hopefully. So I'm going to also delete the source test Java folder. This is where you would normally put any JUnit tests you're going to run. For this tutorial, I'm not going to be delving too much into it. So we're just going to do a very simple project. We will go over this again in the next tutorial. This is just a proof of concept to show you that you've done a quick little thing.
Alright, so as far as making a new package here in your project, traditionally what you want to do is you want to create a package with either your website, or if you don't have a website, you could just do me.yourusername.project name. For this instance, we're probably going to do com.negaffinity.tutorial project. So since that's our website is negaffinity.com, so you would do the website backwards, com.negaffinity.your project name. So, yeah.
Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is create the main class. This will be the only class we're creating today. The way it works is you can either call it main or the name of your project. I personally prefer to call it by the name of the project, so I'm going to call it tutorial project, and I will open this up. And the first thing we're going to do is add a main plugin annotation. This will tell Sponge to load it. If you want to follow along in the documentation again, we're now over here, and as you can see, this is an annotation. If you don't know what it is, you can read about it on the Oracle documentation that I've put in the description. So what we do here is we add this, and all of these parameters will be used to write to a informational file in the jar that is generated by Gradle. This helps the server read how to do it. How to read basically your plugin, what it needs to run, and then also its name, version, etc. So the name we will call for this whole series will be tutorial project and tutorial project. So the only method we're going to be adding today is a listener. This annotation signifies that the method below it will be a listener method, meaning Sponge has to register it to their event bus and post events to it. If you don't know what that is, it's not a problem. It just means that you're going to be receiving an event there, and that's how Sponge picks it up. So on initialize, we're going to have this event be called the game initialization event. And the reason it's not showing me anything is because I gotta refresh the Gradle project, which means it'll go ahead and download all the dependencies we added here. Now if I do Control-Shift-O will automatically import anything for you, and you can see that it imported the Sponge listener annotation, plugin annotation, and game initialization event. We're also going to want to inject a logger. To do this, we use the annotation @inject, put a private logger under it, and this will be filled when the plugin is initialized by the Sponge project. And we'll add a getter for this and import everything as always. It actually doesn't matter which inject you use. I personally go with the Google one because I like Google. I don't know. So now what you're going to want to do is go ahead and say, hello world. If you go over here, your Gradle task might be at the bottom of your screen. All you do is press the little arrow and double click build, and it will build up your project. And you'll see over here that it's saying it's writing your information file that I told you about to the mcmod.info. We'll look at this later. It's also saying we do not have a plugin description. We'll add this in the next episode. It's not very important. So if we go over here, you can go to build, libraries, and if you open this up with WinRAR or 7-zip, you'll see that we have an mcmod.info file, and it says it depends on Sponge. We're version 1, and these are the name and ID. Alright, so now that we know how the project structure is working, let's go ahead and show you that it works. So we have a plugin testing server set up. If you don't know how to do this, there's a link in the description, and in our next episode we will be going over how to do this also in a more efficient way later on in the series. So you just paste this jar in here and you run your server like normal, and as mine comes online, we're going to be looking for our hello world message. Alright, the server's loaded, and as you can see right here, our logger object was initialized and it printed hello world on our game initialization event being passed to our plugin. Congratulations, you've successfully created your first Sponge plugin, and we will be doing much more in the episodes to come. Thank you for watching.